I was about 8 when this happened. My parents had me late. My 2 older siblings are at least 10 years older. A downstairs ruckus woke me up in the middle of the night. My parents. I opened my door and heard my parents panicking about something I didn't understand. I stood at the top of the stairs and called, "Mom? Dad?" At the foot of the stairs, my mom said, "Go back to bed." I listened without question. However, I could tell they were worried. I heard the front door downstairs slam shut and then silence while trying to fall asleep. I assumed they left the house but didn't know why. I got back to sleep after listening to my mom. I woke up to the below sounds again. The front door closed and footsteps followed, but no speech. Naturally, I figured they were home and being quiet to avoid waking me up. A few feet and thuds came from downstairs. I believed I heard the fridge open and close as well as drawers and cabinets. I imagined it was my old brother Chris, 10 years older than me, driving and going out and coming home late. He got home around 2 a.m. and searching the fridge was usual. I told myself these rational reasons for what I heard. Eventually, I heard footsteps climbing the stairs, becoming louder and closer till they reached the top and went to my door first thing. My door opened gently. I lay there with my eyes open, facing the door. Everyone outside my room was wandering in the dark, so all I saw was this black mass at my doorway that resembled a head. Every name, from Chris to Mom to Dad, was uttered. Then who's there? I was confused but a little creeped out when they didn't respond and closed the door. I heard descending footsteps. After returning home, I was sure it was my dad checking on me. I wondered why he ignored me. I heard nothing from downstairs for a time. I went downstairs in the dark out of curiosity. I approached the kitchen with all the lights off and paused at the doorway when I saw a tall figure in the middle. Based on his size, I said, "Dad," presuming it was him. I raced upstairs to my room, closed the door, and got beneath the covers when a deep voice whispered, "Go back upstairs." I only wondered, why did my dad's voice sound like that? I didn't realize a stranger was in the house until I heard the front door open and my parents' voices downstairs. I went up the stairs again and surprised them by being awake. Asked what occurred. They informed me Chris had a minor accident but would be okay. A month later, I learned he had a car accident while driving drunk. My parents got a hospital call and went to visit him first thing, leaving me to sleep. I questioned my dad if he had been in my room before and learned they had been gone for hours. My mom yelled at my dad for not locking the door as they left the house in a hurry. When I told my parents about the guy at my bedroom door and in the kitchen, my dad searched the home with his revolver, and my mom called the police. My final memory was being asked to tell my story by a police officer. My parents felt stupid explaining to the police that they left me alone and left the door unlocked. I don't think anything valuable was stolen, even if the burglar didn't intend to hurt me. Having a stranger in your house is scary enough, let alone at 8 years old. About 2013 to 2014. We moved into a new house in Springfield, Illinois, to be closer to school and pay less rent. My brother Caleb was 7 or 8. Overall, it was a nice residence with a winter fireplace. My brother loved Batman and had a Batman car that made noises and lit up when pressed. Since it was his favorite toy, he played with it regularly. One afternoon, he came inside after playing outside and told us he found something. My mom and I naturally asked what it was. One of those tags you receive for extra school photos showed a little guy. The photo was so worn that you couldn't see the year. We believed it was fine that a parent lost their child's picture. Then my brother remarked, "That's Buddy," confusing me. He repeated himself after I stared at him with a glance that said so. "This is Buddy," he added, pointing to the photo. "He's my friend." I gently nodded as if I knew who he meant. This confused me because my brother didn't make friends easily and didn't have any pals, and Buddy only showed up after we moved. He probably made friends with the next-door neighbors and kept the school picture as a keepsake, I thought. I heard my brother talking at 3 a.m. when everyone was asleep. Naturally annoyed, I went into his room to tell him to go to bed or wake up our parents. It was strange because when I entered his room, he was sitting up straight in bed, as if talking to someone other than himself or his toys. I went to bed after telling him to. A few days later, my mom asked me if I had seen my brother get up at night. I responded no. A few nights ago, I heard him conversing, but that was it. "Why?" she asked. He had been acting weird, she added, but as usual, we both shrugged it off as him being a kid. With my bed across from my door, I could look into the hallway if I turned over. I woke up to use the bathroom one night and left the hallway light on, knowing my dad would turn it off once he got up and I'd be asleep. I'm still frightened of the dark. I jumped as a noise startled me in bed facing my door. It was my brother's Batman car playing up. I went into my brother's room to tell him he shouldn't be up this late playing, but he was asleep in his bed with the toy on the floor still making noise. I stepped over to turn it off. I eventually slept again. The following days, my brother kept talking about Buddy. I went to our neighbors' houses to the right and left because I was getting scared. One house was empty, and the other had no children. My dad reassured me that it was probably just an imagined acquaintance he made up. I accepted it because I had no other option. However, practically every night, my parents or sister would say we heard my brother's toy making noise and had to turn it off in the room. Again, I said I had to do it and mentioned my brother talking to someone. My dad swears the toy was motion activated one night, yet we bought it without a motion activation ad. I'm glad my sister and I slept in my room together since we were so uneasy. Otherwise, I'd probably put this off as a terrible dream. I was talking to my sister to stay calm when we heard my brother's toy. We peeked through my open door into my brother's room across from mine. Our horror grew as we observed our brother's toy roll past the entrance alone. Since we were already terrified out, our parents became upset at our brother for playing a cruel trick on us as we shouted and hurried to their room. I got shivers when he said, "It wasn't me. Buddy wanted to play that night." The toy was thrown away, batteries included. Sister and I were relieved, until tomorrow. Brother had the toy again. My parents suspected him of getting it from the trash, but he said, "Buddy got it for me." The toy was broken up and thrown away forever. Our parents bought my brother a new Batman figurine, which calmed him down. About a week later, when we all felt okay and Buddy was gone, my mom was cooking chicken breasts on the countertop George Foreman grill and came into the living room to ask us something. We all jumped when we heard a kitchen crash. As if flung, the George Foreman grill was halfway across the kitchen as we entered. My mom said it wasn't near the edge, and my dad didn't explain. We left a year later without incident. I still wonder if Buddy, my brother's imaginary companion, was real. At 10, we moved to a new town and house. Starting a new primary school as a 5th grader is usually difficult. I was the new kid, so it was weird. All the kids knew each other. I remember the first few days of elementary school being awkward since you had to sit with your class during lunch. Being the new kid makes it harder to make friends because kids that age are quite judgmental. Despite being the new child on the street, I met some of the other kids. Daniel went to a private school, therefore, we attended different schools. He asked me whether I had moved into the corner house while I was bicycling down the block. From there, we hung out. A few days later, I met Alex. Once, Alex rang the doorbell and asked my parents for me. It confused me when my parents called me to the door and introduced him. He, who lived down the block, asked if I loved video games. Naturally, I accepted and went to his house to play Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas. That game was on my wish list, so I agreed. The opposite block corner house was his, so we walked there. The house appeared run down and neglected right away, even though it was the same size as most on the block. The front yard has 2 large dirt spots with a walkway to the door and no vegetation. The house was messy inside, like a hoarder's, boxes and rubbish in every room. He showed us the basement, which smelled like 15 cats. Strangely, no pets were present. The basement may have been the messiest room in the house. We sat on this brown leather couch by the TV. He has a PS2 and a GameCube. He started San Andreas, and we played 2-player, which was fun. At that point, I thought I would like Alex and want to be friends. I responded, "I gotta go," and he seemed disappointed, like he wanted to stay. However, after 2 hours of playing, I wanted to go home. He followed me halfway home until I said, "See you later," which meant, "Alright, go away now." That was the first hint Alex was a wacko, but I didn't worry yet. The next day, Alex rang the doorbell and asked my parents to let me play. This time, we played GameCube in my room for an hour. Not to be rude or judgmental, but I was starting to dislike him since he was odd and made me uncomfortable with his physical proximity. His bell sounded again after school the next day. I wasn't feeling well and told my mom to tell him, so he left. I preferred hanging out with Daniel since I liked him more. I biked to Daniel's house that day to hang around. He was down, so we rode our bikes up the block, but as we passed Alex's house, he came outside onto his front porch as if waiting by the window. It was strange and awkward because my mom had told him I was unwell. I informed Daniel that I hung out with that boy and thought he was unusual as we passed. Daniel was startled that I hung out with him, calling his family weird. Daniel told me Alex was 12, 2 years older than me. From then on, I avoided him. Next weekend, Alex knocked on our door again, begging for me. She told him I'm not home if he came back because I told her. Late that night, I woke up to a refreshing breeze from my open window. I left the window closed on that cold September night. I wondered who caused the unexpected breeze in the morning. Something poked my foot, and I shrieked. Alex was at the foot of my bed. He told me to stay quiet, just him. Before I could inquire what he was doing in my room, he said his parents were fighting and he wanted to sleep with me. He climbed my window. I was stunned. I told him to go. He begged me to let him share my bed again. I told him to go. Watching him turn and climb out my window was scary. I locked the window and proceeded to wake up my folks to tell them. They were shocked. The next day, my folks went down the block to talk to Alex's parents and returned saying it went poorly. Alex's psychotic mother screamed and laughed at my parents, taking no responsibility for his acts. My parents probably didn't want the police involved because Alex was a kid. However, many nights later, I heard window knocks. Even though my shades were closed, I knew it was Alex. The knocks continued for 5 minutes without a response. I even heard window opening attempts. My heart raced with fear. Naturally, the knocking ceased. After telling my parents, they instructed me to disregard it. I guess they weren't as threatened since Alex was a youngster. Daniel, another school friend, and I biked down the block from my place a few days later. I noticed Alex run to the window as we passed his house and watch. My pals laughed when I told them what happened. My other acquaintance said he sounds like someone who would live in a disgusting house. I woke up to the sound of my window breaking for the last time that night. Alex going through the window, through the drawn blinds, made me scream like a girl. I ran into my parents' room to wake them. Alex had returned outdoors. My dad chased him back to his house, but Alex got inside before he returned. My dad hammered on the door until Alex's parents opened up, and he must have said something right to get them to pay for the window without calling the police. They paid to fix the window, and I never heard from Alex again, but I saw him once or twice in front of his house every couple of years when driving by. Thankfully, that family moved on. Alex may have wanted to murder or harm me since he observed me hanging out with other kids when I didn't want to be his friend. After breaking my window and climbing inside, what else would he do? Wondering how Alex turned out scares me.